Okay, so I want to start maybe a weird place for you, but I saw that your filmmaking journey began on an HP with Windows Movie Maker, and that is the same place that mine began. So I was kind of curious if how you look back at that time and how maybe working on something as clunky as a Windows Movie Maker has kind of prepared you for where you are now.
Yeah, I think that's a great. Thank you for looking into that. I think
Absolutely.
that's a great intro. I think the kind of the level of thought that you have to place into every step of the process definitely prepares you for the process of filmmaking, which
Mhm.
really doesn't exist anymore. You can kind of just shoot, shoot, and shoot. But working on a computer like that, working on tape, having to transfer every single thing you shot by watching it in real time and screen capturing it into your movie recorder is a very, very time-consuming process. It gives you a lot of patience, and I'm nostalgic for it, sure, but I've also been lucky enough to edit on the Steam Deck, so I
Mm.
have a lot of different filmmaking process experiences, and I'm happy now that we just have access to more professional quality tools.
Absolutely. You can't beat those transitions that Windows Movie Maker had though. Those were those were really great.
I tried to stay away from those, man. The zooms in and the slide across. Some people still use them.
I know. So you're someone who has had films play at huge festivals, and what do you feel like these larger festivals are missing in terms of when it comes to like the audience experience and the filmmaker experience?
Yeah, I think, the film festivals are kind of in the same boat as a lot of other entities in the industry right now. They are trying to get people in seats.
Hmm.
And because of that, there's a lot of over curation or over um, branding
Mm.
of what these look like. And I think there's a lot of heart and kind of raw expression that's missing still that people usually go to these kinds of places for to experience.
Hmm. And so you have a film festival and it's in its 10th year. Can you talk a little bit about, I think everybody who loves film has thought about the idea of starting a festival. So what was it like to get from idea to that first year and then to make it to year 10 this year?
Yeah, so after having gone to some festivals like Cannes and at Sundance, Tribeca, Hampton International was actually my first festival experience. I was a screening spy for Cara Cusimano. So I had a lot of experiences where I got a sense of what film festivals were supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I realized, after having gone to some as viewers and then having after as a viewer and then having gone to some as a filmmaker, there was kind of a disconnect in that experience where, the goal as a filmmaker is to go and get your next film made. You don't really know a lot about the financial part of it, how to market and sell your film. You're just going to network and to try to build your next project to just continue working in this industry. And I didn't see that actually happening authentically from a networking standpoint. The parties ended up becoming full of open bar, forget who you are type of situations, or no one really followed up after the fact. And I was like, there's got to be a way to actually deliver what these filmmakers are going to the film festival for in a more direct way.
Mm-hmm.
And this was back in 2012. I was kind of conceiving my options at the time. I was like, okay, do I go on YouTube and try to make a tenth of a cent per view and become like a vlogger? That didn't really seem like the path. Or do I try to debt finance a bunch of money into a company and then try to make a film and then have this product that I could try to maybe sell for licensing? And I was looking at Netflix at the time as kind of the major independent licensor. They were giving out, 3-year deals for 100,000, 200,000, something like that. And I saw that model actually kind of disappearing. I was like, these guys are just going to continue to invest in original products, in original films. and they're going to leave independent filmmakers behind, which is what they ultimately did. I said, okay, what are the self-distribution platforms out there that I could use? And there was nothing that was as curated as something like Netflix, but nothing as accessible as something like YouTube. It's not
Hmm.
like I could submit my film to Netflix. So I was like, okay, let's go and build that. And so we built out the platform, we built out the mechanism, and we created the film festival a year after that as a way to celebrate the films on the platform on an annual basis. We implemented a voting mechanism, and the film festival has taken some shapes over the years, but in its most recent incarnation, what we do now is we have films kind of curated by our review committee.
Hmm.
So there's like a preliminary judging process before films get on the platform. And then once films are on the platform and part of the festival, it's viewers that decide, who becomes the top 10, who's screened in front of our live audience, and then who ultimately wins.
Yeah. And I want to come back to your audience driven programming in a second, but I am curious about the name of the festival and the streaming service. Is Nukhu? Am I pronouncing that right?
Nuku, correct, yeah.
So I did a little research, and are you using it like from the Babylonian like for the word for rest? Is that where it came from?
So there was actually no word, but yes, you're right. It is Babylonian and ancient Egyptian in origin. There
Mhm.
was no actual word, at least when I was conceiving of it at the time. Maybe there's somebody who's done some research, but I was looking at kind of paying homage to the first people who created the language,
Mhm.
and I was looking at Babylonian, ancient Egyptian. I saw the Nu was the creation of everything
Mhm.
out of watery chaos, and the Ku is the human spirit and soul, kind of consciousness. And I said, what interesting concepts to embody what humanity means and its truest expression.
Yeah. That's I was very confused how rest was going to come into it because I was like, I feel like filmmaking is work, not rest, but I I like yours a lot more.
You
Um,
need to rest between stages so that you have
exactly.
some distance from your project.
So going back to the audience driven programming, I think, and you bring up Netflix, you bring up streaming. I've talked to a lot of filmmakers who have been like feeling disheartened when they talk to these streamers now who they're essentially like saying, yeah, we want to make content that is going to be half paid attention to. And I think that they're losing these streaming services are losing faith in the audience, but you are putting your entire faith in the audience. So can you talk a little bit about why you want to put the audience like at the forefront in the way that you are?
I think you're right. There's a really interesting problem with getting people to care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, part of what our goal is, what our initiative is to get people excited about supporting films, about seeing original films, original ideas, get them engaged in supporting those filmmakers from an active standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the way people consume content right now is very passive.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of trying to enable that further, we're actually saying, if you're really interested in unique content and original ideas, original stories, you kind of need to work for it.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, because I feel like as someone who is the film critic and who talks to other people about film, I get a lot that people will say their opinion to me and they'll say, but I'm no film critic. And I feel like everybody is a film critic, an art critic, a critic of everything that they're experiencing. And would you say the same way in how the audience is getting this say in, what they believe in, what they want to see?
Yeah, I don't think you need to be a critic to be an
Mm-hmm.
appreciator of films. You don't have to be somebody that, understands mise en scène or breaks
Mm-hmm.
down all the cinematography, breaking down all the lines and the grids of a composition. But I do think that you as a person know what moves you
Mm-hmm.
and know what affects you. And I think that's really all it takes
Mm-hmm.
to be able to have a voice and to be able to say, you know what? I like this. I'm going to like it. I'm going to vote for it. That's what social media, that's what you have on social media. You either like something or you scroll past it. I think the difference is, viewers can scroll for 2 hours for free on social media and barely remember a couple of videos versus watching a film in a theater and maybe having it affect them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking about your experience at film festivals and where you feel like the filmmaker experience at festivals isn't what it should be, you've created with Nukhufest and the streaming service, you have this robust ecosystem now of grants and mentorships and help with Oscar qualifying campaigns. And to me, that's like creating a sustainable eco structure in our industry. So, why do you feel like other festivals are not looking to keep this engine going in this sustainable way?
It's very expensive.
Mm,
It's very expensive to put together a show and
mm,
to create this presentation that ultimately you need to get people engaged in order to maintain that level of support, institutional support.
mm,
And I think, when you become reliant on delivering a certain number of quota of numbers or engagement or um, a specific conversion for some reason, um, you end up making decisions that don't necessarily put the filmmaker or the viewer first.
mm.
They're just there to put the show on.
Yeah. And so with the things that you have created with the grants and the mentorships, how can you talk a little bit about like the immediate impact that you've seen from people who have gone through this and who have benefited from it?
Yeah, so I get the fortune of working with the filmmakers directly,
Mm,
that either win our annual development to distribution grant or that win our finalists of our micro grant throughout the year. And a lot of the support is in mentorship and guidance in addition to the money. I
mhm,
think that component of attention to detail is kind of undervalued and underlooked when it comes to a lot of programs or initiatives out there. And so the immediate value I see is like, okay, yes, you have this money earmarked for your film, but
mhm,
how are you going to spend it? Like, what's the idea you're trying to tell? What's the story here? Like, what's the plan, the team that's going to take to put it together? And then what are you going to do with it afterwards? And so having conversations with filmmakers from, seed to sale is
mhm.
is really it's awesome.
Yeah. Are you saying that Hollywood throwing money at diversity is not the answer to all of their problems?
I think throwing money at diversity is kind of gets lost in translation.
Hmm.
I think for one, when they did that in the past, they put very strict requirements on
Hmm.
ROI without actually funding marketing or
Hmm.
funding the actual distribution efforts of those projects. They kind of just withdrew support, and now they're barely doing that. I think diversity actually needs to come from the top.
Hmm.
I think more so than investing in diverse projects and diverse creatives, underrepresented creatives, we need to have more representation
Hmm.
in the executive wing. There needs to be more executives of diversity in order for that kind of real effect, real change to take fold.
Absolutely. And I was reading an interview or maybe the press release about the upcoming festival that the real barrier that you said the real barrier indie filmmakers are facing isn't distribution, it's this effective marketing and visibility. So why do you feel like that is often forgotten from the indie side? And then what are some of like the traps that you see people fall into when they are trying to market their indie film?
So I think marketing is very elusive. I
Mm-hmm.
think you know, every single film has its own requirements for how you find an audience and then how do you reach an audience and scale it.
Mm-hmm.
You look at very successful films like indie films like Napoleon Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
They did a good job at um using campuses to test screen the film, creating the first online fan club for their
Mm-hmm.
film, and really generated a organic buzz around the release of it, so that when the film ultimately was released theatrically, there was an embedded audience that was wanting to rewatch the film for
Mhm.
the third, fourth, fifth time. And then that cult following expanded beyond that group and into other audiences. And
Mhm.
now years later, people still love that film. I think when you look at the resources allocated to independent films versus the resources allocated towards superhero films or
Mhm.
kind of IP type of films, there's an uneven balance
Mhm.
in how you can creatively generate those unique campaigns for those independent films versus just slapping on a superhero poster on a billboard or on all of the subway buses and and all of the stops. It's just there's every film needs a level of attention that it's just not getting, and the education for independent filmmakers is just not there on how to do it. That's why you see a lot of influencers and content creators kind of creating their own films because they've already nailed down the marketing part to a degree. I
Mhm.
think where they end up falling into the trap is like where their whole following is based off of a certain type of filmmaking or a certain type of content. And then they try to rebrand or create content outside of that genre. And then not them realizing that their audience doesn't want it.
Yeah. And you don't have to tell me about Napoleon Dynamite's fame. I was haunted all through middle school because I was Tina the llama from Napoleon Dynamite,
No
and
way.
I got like that was a dark time in my life. I want to ask too about so you have we talked a little bit about the Nukhu streaming service, but I want to really focus on the way that you are doing compensation connected through that because I think that is such an important and impactful and again sustainable really way of encouraging filmmakers to continue telling stories.
Every film is unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very inherent difference between the way we monetize films versus the way traditional subscription streamers monetize films. They kind of just loop all of these films, regardless if they were made for $1 million or $100 million under the same $10 a month subscription.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the finances there don't really equate. What happens if that $1 million film had 100 million viewers and then $100 million film had a million viewers?
Mm-hmm.
Like how are you actually comparing the economics when or the engagement to the economics? And I think that's where our micropayments model really balances out that equation better. So if a film costs, $50,000 to make, you're going to charge $1 for that film.
Mm-hmm.
If the film costs more than that, maybe you'll charge more. But I think having the decision of what the price costs, given empowered by the filmmaker, allows that the kind of sustainability that you are talking about. And so we've said that, if you're a filmmaker that has specific economics around your film and you know what your film is worth, it's kind of a real time price. You can charge $1 for it now. You can charge
Mm-hmm.
50 cents for it later in the future. Do that, and transparently, you get 50% of that price.
Mm-hmm.
There's no opaque algorithm that's going to say, well, it depends on what country and it depends on what time and it depends on which how
The
many
phase of the
clicks,
moon.
how much you watch through, none of that stuff. I think you have to believe that the work that we're curating is worth your time,
Mm-hmm.
and then give those filmmakers a chance.
Yeah. And I really love that there's a theatrical request option. Can you talk a little bit about that and like why that feels important to you in this time when everyone keeps saying that movie theaters are dying?
Absolutely. I love the theater
Mhm.
experience. And quite often, a lot of the filmmakers that come through our program make films that are perfect for theaters. But there's something about the cadence and the pacing, especially if they're shorts, maybe the level of suspense that they're building over the course of a 20-minute short. Just, you don't have the patience of the online viewer.
Hmm.
So how do you introduce that online, or how do you create the space for those films to get that level of respect? And then also for those films that are successful, say this film would actually, I would love to see this on a big
Hmm.
screen. And, we've given that option to any viewer to request it in any city. And we put pop-up screenings together and everywhere, whenever films that get enough support in a specific area. And I think, that goes back to the traditional release model where
Hmm.
you look at a film that you're not sure if it's deserving of a national release. So you're gonna do like a limited release, a
Hmm.
platform release in some top cities. It goes back to that kind of original theatrical model of sustainability and doing a responsible rollout for a film.
Yeah. And my last question for you is you've been doing this and been in this film industry for decades. I feel like I can say. And so what is one of your proudest memories associated with Nuku Fest or the streaming platform that just like makes you, gives you energy to keep doing this every single day?
Honestly, that changes all the time. And I can say the through line is when I'm talking to the filmmakers
Mm,
that are directly engaged in what we're doing, what we're offering. They understand what we're doing, and they're receptive.
mm,
Um, I'm so fulfilled just by having those meetings that, quite often we as a company, we face a lot of adversity as well.
mm,
And that is just kind of the growing pains of running a company.
mm.
But yeah, what makes me proud is seeing these films complete or go on to the festival circuit and then end up on Nuku and get support and yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah. And just to end it, you want to give like a snapshot of where we are now leading up to the festival in the middle of August right now?
Yeah, so submissions are closing
Mm,
next Wednesday. We're a week away from our deadline for this year. We have a slate of films coming on this weekend, Saturday, some more coming on next week before the deadline. And then the top 10 finalists will be determined on August 31st. There'll be about 3 weeks of online voting for the top 10. And then the winner will be announced at our in-person screenings, or after our in-person screenings on September 27th in Lower Manhattan.
very nice. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sanjay. I hope maybe I can somehow make it to New York and get there.
Absolutely. If not, then you request a screening in Pittsburgh and we'll come out
Um,
there.
Absolutely. We got a couple cool theaters, I do have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. You have a great rest of your day, okay?